after school on Tuesdays. If you have to operate without a schedule, that's a lot, because you're going to do significantly better if you know what's coming next and you're able to train yourself to shift from one task to the next. Navigating conflicts. If I have a conflict with a peer and I have challenges with cognitive flexibility, part of that conflict, or why it could be worse for me or why I'm reacting worse to it, is I can't put myself in the shoes of the other person and think, well, why did they react to me this way? Or why is it that what I said or did made them feel this way? Because they're not me, and I'm just thinking in how my brain works and what my emotions were around that. Following directions for new tasks that you've never done before. And this one is, to me, it's a brain freeze. It's not specific to cognitive flexibility, but that's definitely part of it. As a student, if you give me a task that I'm really used to, it's like, great, I've done it, and I can just crank that out. And then the first time you take me from you're going to write a paragraph to you're going to write an essay, I will freeze when you tell me to start that assignment. And it's just, my gears have to kind of get greased in my brain to be able to process that I can do that. So if I'm, going about my daily thing, I mean, even in college, okay, write a 5-paragraph essay. Oh, I did this through all of high school, knocking them out. And then you're going to write a 25-page paper. There's well over an hour of brain freeze in my college head, just going like, I don't even know how to start this, before I can go, okay, what's the first step? How can I start breaking this down? Trying another problem when stuck, or trying another method when stuck on a problem, you just go, I tried something and it didn't work. I'm done. There's no solving this problem. Whereas somebody with more cognitive flexibility will go, what's another way that I could approach this situation? And then quickly switching between tasks. If you give me, or give a student, just like with the color word test, give me all just addition problems on a page, I can do that. Give me all subtraction, I can do that. Mix addition and subtraction, I'm going to slow down, because my brain has to shift from one lane to another. What's the task that I'm doing on each one? And it's the same thing in the home environment. If I'm in the middle of cleaning my room and I know that routine, and then you tell me I need to go set the table, and I'm not used to that, that's going to be a whole new thing for my brain to have to deal with. It's going to take more processing time. And then the last one is inhibitory control. And more than the text on the page, that picture of that dog tells me exactly what the definition of this is. And it's just inhibiting your dominant response. There's something you want to do, but there's something that you need to do before you can do that thing you want to do, or instead of that thing that your brain wants to do. It's essentially having filter, being able to prevent yourself from doing something in order to accomplish a different goal. So thinking before you act. And I'm sure you can already think of tons of ways that your kids, even your kids that never needed an IEP or a 504, had a disability, just growing up, you can see challenges with inhibitory control for everybody, such as being able to wait your turn, raising your hand, eating your vegetables, making sure that you only say things when you have nice things to say, keeping your hands off your friends' toys, using appropriate language, literally anything that you could possibly be asking them to do when there's something else they want to do. Now, the other 5 pillars of executive functioning, again, I would argue, fall under those 3 umbrellas, really. It's task initiation, organization, planning, self-monitoring, so self-awareness. Am I still on task? Am I making progress to do this in the time I set for myself? And being able to control your emotions. If you struggle with those first 3 things, I would argue you're going to struggle with all 5 of these. I know that was a lot, and I was going to go into, so in summary, it's organization, being able to prioritize your tasks, being able to think about things differently, being able to manipulate ideas in your head without having to put it on paper, being able to restrain yourself from a dominant response, and regulating your emotions are all executive functions. Now, when we talk about supporting executive functioning, especially considering, we're a pre-K through 8th grade program, I use bowling as the best analogy I can think of for this in terms of accommodation versus intervention. As I said before, we can't ask an 8-year-old to just have the executive functioning of a 25-year-old brain. And sometimes it truly does take that long for your brain to finish those front to back connections. In fact, that's actually considered pretty typical. And in line with what I was saying about being able to feel successful in your in what you're being asked to do, let's stick with the bowling analogy, bumper lanes versus teaching me how to bowl. If I'm a little kid like the one on the left, and you are trying to teach me how to spin the ball so that I get a strike every time when I'm 6, and every time I try to do that while you're teaching me these skills, the ball goes into the gutter, I don't want to do bowling anymore because I don't feel successful. I didn't have the accommodations in order to say, oh, this is fun because I feel like I'm doing good at it. So we need to put those bumper lanes in so that we're not always getting those gutter balls when we keep trying and trying. And while those bumper lanes are in, while we have those accommodations, we're teaching the child what works for them, strategies they can use to be more independent, to try and hit those bumpers less and less so that we can start to fade those accommodations away. So different supports, and this is where I wanted to give you an opportunity to feel what it feels like to have executive functions and like, oh, that's more challenging than this. The supports I'll go into a lot more quickly in a bigger overview because there's so much. In triple the time, I would still need more time. And I'm still learning as well. So supporting working memory and other forms of executive functioning. Visual schedules can be really helpful. So a student, in your classrooms, in some of our SDCs, you'll see icon schedules where the child goes, okay, I've put away my toys. Now it's time for circle time. The same thing can be helpful at home. I've brushed my teeth. Now it's time for me to put on my pajamas. Checklists for the same reason. Chunking directions, and that can be done to the capacity of the child. It could be brush your teeth, then come back to me. Or it could be, I want you to brush your teeth and then put on pajamas. And once they finish brushing, do you remember what you're supposed to do next? So you're still pushing them to try and work on that, building that working memory. Short and simple instructions. So not, okay, I understand that you're frustrated, but I'm going to need you to do this before we can give you that item you want. It's, first sit, then toy. Keeping the language as simple and limited as possible, depending on the student's profile, so that they're able to keep just the core information you need rather than having to dissect the rest of the language. And for cleaning, sometimes we can't visualize where things are supposed to go. So they just get put in other places without getting organized. So having a picture or pictures posted on the wall of what a clean room looks like, so they can go, okay, I'm now holding my shoes. I look to the picture. Oh, that cubby is where the shoes go. Or just having nice, big, clear labels so that they go, oh, those, I see that cubby's for shoes. Now I'm going to look for all the shoes in my room and move them into that cubby. And then forward and backward chaining for longer and more complex tasks, like when I was talking about tying shoes. This one I have a couple of extra slides about because it's a more involved process. So let's say we're focused on tying shoes or teaching somebody how to make a PB&J. It's not just a thing where you can say, oh, you need to do X, because there's so many little more discrete steps. So for example, with a PB&J, doing a task analysis, if as the adult working with the kid, we don't really break down every discrete step, something's going to be missing, and either, like with making a sandwich, the kid's going to have to go back and clean up a mess and do a bunch of extra work, and it's going to take more time, or the product won't be what we actually wanted for the end result. So we have to really analyze what's every single step of the task. Well, if I want my kid to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, the first thing they have to do is get all the items they're going to need. They're going to need a butter knife, they're going to need a loaf of bread, peanut butter, and their preferred type of jelly. Then what do they have to do? Oh, opening all the lids, et cetera, and so forth. And if we miss any one of those steps, it's not going to be a PB&J. Once we know every step, then we have options for chaining, because we can't necessarily, oh, hi, Ben. We can't necessarily ask for the child to be able to do it all at once, which would be called complete chaining. So forward chaining is when you say, okay, we're just going to do, you're going to help me do just the first step of this task. Now we're going to practice. And you keep doing that until they've mastered that first step. And they just get a reward or an incentive every time they do just that first step. And then once they've mastered that, then, okay, you're going to do the first 2 steps of the process. And then we're going to reward and praise so that you feel good and successful. Then 3, then 4, all the way until the task is done. Backward chaining is the opposite, where the majority of the task has already been completed for the child, and then they just have to do the last step. And then once they've mastered just that last step, okay, everything but the last 2 steps of this has been done for you, then you need to complete that. So both can be beneficial in different scenarios. My argument and my opinion on this would be, if you absolutely need the task to be done, such as with tying shoes, then use backward chaining. Okay, I'm going to do all except for the last step of tying your shoes, because no matter what, the shoes need to be tied. Practicing just the first step, the kid's still tripping over their shoelaces. But if I do all the loop and swoop, and then you're just going to pull those 2 loops tight, great. Now, once they master that, okay, now you're going to loop that around and then pull the 2 loops tight, and so on. Whereas if you're focusing on, let's say it's summer and you just want to focus on, we're going to do multi-digit addition or multiplication or long division, and you don't care about the product being finished. You just want to celebrate the growth from just 1 step to just 2 steps. It could be, okay, for today or for this week or however long it takes, depending on the child, we're just going to do the 1 step. 6 divides 1, how many times? 0. That's great. So put the 0 at the top. Now you're just going to do that, only that first step for every problem on this page, and then we're done. We're considering that done for today. And then as they are successful with that, you build up in just the first 2 steps, and then the first 3, and all of a sudden they're doing everything. Oh, and then I'll give some time. A few of the slides were a little bit too involved, and so we had to make sure that we had both the English slide and then the Spanish slide. And this is really anything. It could be brushing your teeth, it could be toileting, it could be your morning dressing routine, getting through the process of showering and making sure that you've actually cleaned yourself and didn't just get your entire body wet and then come out and dry yourself. All of that is a complex multi-step process. So cognitive flexibility, remember thinking about things from different angles, different ways, ways to support that. Consistent daily schedules and routines is a great accommodation for that. Front loading changes to schedule, giving a lot of notice, like, okay, I know we always go to the library on Tuesdays, but tomorrow things are going to be different. We're going to grandma's house because it's her birthday, so that they have more of that time to process that change and think about it in a different way. When you have new or more intimidating tasks, giving that more processing time. It's okay, we're going to do something different today. Here's what you're going to do. Not immediately repeating that direction just because the kid is kind of freezing on you. And then explaining the obvious, such as rules and expectations, actions and consequences, because we don't always see, wait, why am I in trouble? What did I do? Because I don't see why my action fit the consequence. And then navigating social conflicts, as I said before. Really briefly, because this is a little more involved and more of what we would do in schools, or sometimes ABA would do this, is behavior mapping. But you can do this conversationally with a child when you realize that their thinking doesn't match how the outcomes of what they desired. So when we look at a situation, okay, family's playing a board game. What's the expected behavior? Well, we follow the rules. Okay, and if we follow the rules and accept when we don't win, or when we didn't get exactly what we want, we didn't get the most points, well, then people are going to see that we do play by the rules, and they're going to like that, and they're going to ask us to play more games with them. Whereas the unexpected behavior, if we were to cheat, if I hid extra $100 bills under the Monopoly board, then people are going to not feel good about me, and the social consequences, they're not going to invite me to play board games again. And then I'm going to feel bad about myself. And so really mapping out the difference between the expected and unexpected behaviors so that they can process why they would want to move toward the expected behavior rather than the unexpected. And then for inhibitory control, especially in the lower grades, it's a lot of preventative medicine. We can do things like setting timers, having really small goals, having frequent rewards, preview your expectations. I mean, if at school, the example I would give is, it doesn't matter if it's the first day of school or the last day of school. If I don't want any of my kindergartners to smack their lunchbox into somebody else as we line up for lunch, then I need to start with, and we're about to start lining up for lunch. And when we do, we're going to keep calm bodies and our hands at our sides. Why, Timmy, would I not want to swing my lunchbox around? That's right, because I might hit somebody with it and then I might get a friend hurt. So this is a years-long process, and we want to talk through this because we can't change that brain development overnight. And then this one, this is a flashback to my childhood, I'll certainly admit. Everybody's different. And so when something is not working, it's often telling us something, even if the child isn't aware that it's telling us something. And so I'll switch to the Spanish slide as I'm explaining the scenario. So imagine a child who is sitting there trying to do homework at the kitchen table, for example, and seemingly at random, they lose all focus. Some days it never happens. Some days it happens immediately, or maybe there's a pattern to it. Maybe it seems random, but either they lose all focus or they lose focus to the point where they get frustrated and start to unravel. What are the things that could be happening that are impacting that child that we don't see right on the surface? And I'm curious if any parents actually have any thoughts on what they might have experienced or what they think might be happening in these situations.
They're hungry.
Hungry is absolutely possible. So what if there's an auditory distraction? This one was very real for me. And again, it was one I didn't realize, and it took, I have no idea how long for my mom to realize the moment that the dishwasher turned on, I would just crumble. And I didn't realize it was because there was an auditory distraction, but I would just start shouting like, I can't focus. How long has the child been working at their homework when this usually occurs? Is it always after 20 minutes? Are we reaching a threshold? Is there a specific subject, or is it an assignment that they're not used to? It's more novel and not part of their routine. Do they seem really squirmy in their seats? If so, is there a specific part of their body that seems restless? Do they maybe need a movement break? Do they maybe need a fidget? Do they need to just get up and do a different task for a while before coming back? And then there's so many other factors. Did they get in a fight with their best friend at school? Is it always the days that they have tutoring or horseback riding, or always the days that they're, you know, visiting a friend first? What are the other possibilities? And the truth is, it's not likely to just be one thing for one child. It could be that when they get distracted, it's all of these things on different times or different days, but we have to look and analyze long enough with a patient perspective until we can have that conversation with that child, where it's, hey, I'm noticing that whenever you're trying to do homework, like let's say it's a middle schooler, when you're working on your homework and you're playing your music, it seems like you get pretty distracted by the lyrics of your favorite songs, and now you can't pay attention to your work and the work stops getting done. Maybe that's more of a distraction than something that's helping you focus. And so, as I'd said, a lot of this is really just, it's a long 2.5+ decade conversation of what works for you, what doesn't, and trying to help individuals move to be more aware themselves and try and give them the ability to go, oh, you're right, that doesn't work for me. Or even being able to ask themselves and self-question and say, does this work for me? Trying to build that self-awareness so that they can get partway through a task and say, am I getting this done in the amount of time I thought I would get it done? And if not, what could I possibly change in order to make that happen? So I'm just about done talking at you guys. Thank you for all your patience with me, but just some quick tips. Accommodations to increase success are huge. Consistent routines and patience and practice. Queuing for attention before giving a direction is really, really important. I mean, I remember playing video games or watching TV, and then I get to the dinner table and I'm like, wait, why is there grape juice? They said, we asked you what you wanted. And you said, uh-huh. And then they said, do you want grape juice? I said, uh-huh. I had no recollection of that. I wasn't even aware that somebody was talking to me. And now I'm having spaghetti with grape juice for dinner. So making sure where it's like, hey, Rob, look at me. What do you want to drink with dinner? And also cueing that attention so that you're not constantly calling out a child's name, because it can become white noise where they just don't respond to their name anymore because they're not hearing it. It just becomes background noise. And when I know that for some of us, my parents included, if you said, what do you want to see your child improve on and not struggle on, they could have named 50 things. And while this is challenging, it's target one thing at a time so that they can feel successful growing on that one area. And wherever their baseline is, they can focus on this task for 5 minutes. Well, let's see if they can make it to 5.5, not trying to double to 10 minutes, so that every time we're celebrating that success, rather than saying, well, it's still not working, and the child reflecting and feeling worse and worse on what they're doing, and then wanting to avoid the task more. And again, tons of positive reinforcement. We say at school, we want to try and reinforce and say positive things 5 times to every 1 time we have to correct a behavior. And that's true in everywhere in our lives. We always want to feel 5 times more successful than we are struggling or needing to improve on anything we do. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more that we could be discussing and considering. Reinforcements and reward system structures to learn new skills, how to generalize and then maintain skills so that you're not just doing it at mom's house, but you're able to do it at mom's house and when mom's not home and grandma's visiting. Having consistent routines, cleaning and organizing. Again, I only touched that for about 15 seconds. Time management, self-awareness, emotional regulation, all of this stuff you can explore more deeply and look at in depth in ways that you can have conversations with your child so that they can feel more successful and realize this is not about me. In a book I've been reading recently, it's let's talk about superheroes because these people are amazing and yet every single one of them has a weakness. It doesn't say anything about us or make us any lesser or make us bad, but we all have things that we can be working on and moving on to improve. And so that's me talking your ear off for, I think, a little bit over what I said. Sorry, guys. Does anyone have any questions about executive functioning or corresponding supports?
Thank you so much, Rob. I just want to thank you. Really amazing presentation. I learned a lot. And I thought I knew some things, but it was a lot of eye openings. We kind of goofed in the beginning and started recording late. So I'm going to stop recording for now because